Hi, I'm Samantha, and I'm going to be talking about developmental dyslexia. A quick Google search from the Mayo Clinic will tell you that it's very common, with 3 million cases per year. It's chronic. Lab imaging is not required because it's usually self-diagnosable. Looking at symptoms like late talking, learning new words slowly, a delay in learning to read. Obviously, in young children is where you're looking for these symptoms. They talk about, that there are interventions and therapies that can be used, such as, reading programs, that are given through the educational system or perhaps at-home schooling, in order to be a little bit more successful later on in life. The continued Google search will tell you that the impairments in cognition are difficulty memorizing, spelling, thinking, and understanding. And developmentally, there's a learning disability, a speech delay, delayed reading, headache, speech impairment, etc. Now, further going into, skipping over the basic Google search, which will give you a very broad and very vague description of what dyslexia is. In the Journal of Neurology, Neurosurgery, and Psychiatry, Volume 74, Issue 12, published in 2003, an editorial article, Developmental Dyslexia, was written by W.A. Lishman, an emeritus professor of neuropsychiatry at the Institute of Psychiatry in London, UK, was highlighting genetic influences in dyslexia. He was noting that there are restricted areas of the language cortex, Broca's area, and when given various tasks in both a control group and group of dyslexic adults, first who, again, these adults had showed marked, dyslexia as children, the normal non-dyslexic brains in the rhyming tasks showed activation in Broca-Wernicke's areas, plus everything in between. Now, in the dyslexic brains did not show everything in between. There was a discrepancy there. In the memory tasks, the main significance of this one is dyslexics activated Wernicke's area and the supramarginal gyrus, but Broca's area was very weak, which is a little bit different than what new studies have shown, which I will get to in a moment. In neither task did the dyslexics activate posterior and interior language areas collectively with one another. So it was very separate, just done completely separately, if at all. And this was noted through fMRI. Once they looked at children, in the fMRI, given the rhyming task, there was an activation in the left hemisphere, the temporoparietal and occipitotemporal, but reduced degree compared with the control group. So the left frontal activation was also reduced. Basically, they're boiling it down to there is a disruption in language regions. So given this, we see Broca's area right here, where pretty much everything is going through first. It's, articulation, word analysis, where everything goes in first. And then it's got to go, sequence back into the parieto-temporal, where word analysis and occipitotemporal word form before, and it's got to work collectively all together in order for the full processing to take place. Again, in another article, though, in a more recent one by John Stein, he wrote his article in 2018, discussed that, the view of the 20th century is dyslexia is the inability to learn to read despite normal oral and nonverbal abilities. So the basic problem is the failure to learn to properly sequence the letters in a word and or the sounds of which they are composed. This boils down to temporal processing. So there's slow recognition of letters, poor ability to sequence the order of letters and their sounds, which derives from the impairment of sensory timing. So the shifts of attention by the visual system. This is another article that, unfortunately, the fMRI image is a little bit small, but in here you can see where between normal brains and dyslexic brains, there's some activation that is missing when it comes to different tasks. So the underlying disruption of neural systems is what is the main focus of his article, and he states that what we need to look at instead is the lack of phonemic awareness, phonological theory, which is prominent now, but needs to be, looked at because there is no concrete predisposition and only correlational work and theories in how we understand dyslexia. So as far as we know right now, that it's still very much in the works of studying to find concrete clues, but we are finding more and more that there just seems to be an imbalance in finding, this proper sequencing in neural pathways. Thank you very much.